See, Garrett, I don't have the cheat sheet with you. I just have movie.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
There you go.
So I want to make sure. Okay.
All right. Boogie Nights, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to I Like to Movie. My name is Dan Scully.
My name is Garrett Smith.
And for this week's YouTube, we have a very special guest. We have the writer and director of a wonderful puppet horror movie called FRANK ZED, Mr. Jesse Blanchard. Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Dude, thank you so much for being here, Jesse. We really appreciate it. So FRANK ZED. I get the screener, I start your movie, and it starts with an intro from you explaining that this movie took you 6 years to make.
I mean, it's a longer, but I'm embarrassed to say longer than 6 years. So I feel it's kind of like, I don't know, when you're a kid and you learn that some people just say they're 29 over and over again.
Yes.
And you're like, I guess that's funny. I guess people do that. Anyways, I mean, yeah, it's 6 to 7 years, kind of depending on how you slice it.
Yeah, that is wild. But I'm excited to talk about this. So the reason I'm excited to talk about this is I used to do some claymation when I was growing up. So I have some experience with trying to make something that's even, 5 minutes long and finding out that takes, 3 to 4 months of your time if you're, doing it by hand in your house with materials that you acquired yourself. So I am seeing your movie. I was like blown away by the artistry of it, and I really am excited to talk about really that aspect of it. The taking 6 years to make something like this, that when I got to sit here and watch it, looks to me like something that was made with a lot of money and by like an enormous crew. And I would guess that is not necessarily true. It's more that a lot of time and love was put into it, and that's what I'm seeing on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that. There's the old saw, like good, fast, cheap. Pick two.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Good and cheap and fast was not part of it. I mean, you're working as fast as you can. I mean, that's kind of the journey. You're sprinting, like absolutely everything is fast. And like one of my rules, I mean, we broke it sometimes, but like there's no redos. Like when a character gets built and things like that. I mean, again, you fudge it when you have to, but you're doing things just at a breakneck speed in slow motion. And it's like a weird kind of duality that's happening.
I guess I'm asking what your background is. I imagine it's in puppetry. Where do you, if someone said, oh, let's do something, and I said, sure, and they said, okay, it's going to take about 6 years, I'd be like, I'm done. I quit. What is the inspiration that causes you to just drive at a puppet horror movie for such a long time? Where did this come from?
Well, first of all, I'm a filmmaker who turned to puppets.
Okay. Oh, right on.
I think that's one of the things that makes FRANK ZED different from a lot of, from many puppet films, is that I'm approaching it very much as a filmmaker. And in fact, one of the things I said all the time to the crew is like, we're making a film that just happens to be done with puppets. It is not a puppet film. It just, the puppets walked in one day and we're using them, but this is not a puppet film.
We cast the best actors. They all happen to be made out of cloth, but hey, what are the odds?
They were the most talented people in the house, and so they got cast. Absolutely. But it's really, most of it was just, I never thought it would take this long, of course. But it's like you don't know what you don't know. Like when we meant just to make FRANK ZED, it took a full year to make those two puppets, and one of the things is like how do you, like, you do the sculpt, but like how do you make the mold? And like the first mold we made was out of plaster, and then we made a mold out of fiberglass, and at every step you have to figure out like a million things. Like when you make a fiberglass mold, like if you don't do what's called the release correctly, the mold is glued shut and everything's gone.
Jesus.
Everything is gone. You have to put on like a special kind of wax, basically. It's like shoe polish.
Yeah.
And so basically, you have your sculpture. You spend forever on the sculpture, then you spend forever making a clay wall to perfectly cut the sculpture in half at like a very precise time, and you have a flashlight that lets you know exactly where that line is and all this other stuff, because if you do that wrong, then the sculpture gets locked in. It's called the case line. It's like a whole thing, right? Just to do this first half.
That's so wild.
And then you do the top, and then you do a fiberglass on top of that. You take it over, and then you clean all the clay out. You do it very, very carefully. Clean all this clay, and the little tiny toothbrush, you clean it out because you don't want to muck up your sculpture. You clean it up, you get this fiberglass perfect, and then you put shoe polish on, and you put fiberglass on the top. Or you actually cover it with Bondo first.
Bondo!
You can't have bubbles in your Bondo, so there's a whole thing with that, and then you got to do that. And if you make a mistake, this sculpture that you spent 3 months on is gone.
And then it's square one.
It's completely gone. And the thing is, like, just doing this stuff, the stakes everywhere are just sky high. They feel sky high. And so you're like, you do that, but you win these little battles kind of one at a time. You're like, okay, cool. But then like I remember like Frank's dome. I was like, how do I make a glass dome? Like, how am I gonna blow glass? What am I gonna do? How do I do that? And so I was like, okay, I think I can use this plastic and make a vacuum form. How do I make a vacuum form? So it's just kind of every day you have these battles, this kind of relentless problem solving, but you're only trying to grab what's in front of you. That's kind of it. You're just like, I can get my fingers around this much.
That's so cool though. That's really a great way to approach anything, is to just do what you can when you can. And
exactly.
And I think if you stack enough of those up on one another, you end up with a Frank Zed.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jesse.
I mean, that's literally how I came to puppets. Because I was like, I got this big crazy movie. I don't have resources, and I want the characters, and I want everything to be what's in my head. I don't want to do a movie with like 20-somethings in their apartment. I'm not, other people can do that. Good for them, but that's not the story that I'm interested in. How could I do it? And I was like, puppets. I could do it with puppets. That's okay, I could do it. Okay. So yeah, that question, how can I, and that was the thing, like on the film every day, it's like, how can I move it forward? What can I do? I mean, for instance, like, this is Frank's heart,
Oh, awesome.
This was such, in terms of like the content of the movie, perhaps my favorite aspect of it is the ticking clock of Frank's heart, and the fact that like, and like the almost Pavlovian needs of Zed in order to read. That's such a good relationship. Yeah. I love that.
I'm glad you like it. Like, I didn't want to make this thing because I was like, how am I going to make a heart? Like, heart. How do I make Frank's heart? Man, I don't. And so I didn't want to do it, but I was watching the movie and I was like, I gotta show it. Like, you have to see Frank's heart. You have to see this.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things. And then you just like, so yeah. So this is like one of those.
That's amazing.
Things. Like, how can you do it? And so this is like. So this was Frank's heart,
That's incredible. And so I think I understood this correctly, and I think I noticed in the credits too. So Zed and Frank themselves are obviously like a more intricate creation, I guess you could say, than the rest of the cast of the movie.
Yeah.
And but am I understanding correctly that you made them yourself? Like, you in your home figured out how to do all of this?
Yes and no. So.
Okay.
There's 3 people. So Frank and Zed were sculpted and painted, and like the eyes and all that stuff, by Aaron DeBray, who's like a phenomenal artist. So he did that. I did all the mechanization and the fiberglass, like all the moving eyeballs and all that. I did all of that stuff. But
okay, I mean, I have to stop you immediately there, because I don't know how to do those things. Those aren't things that I just know how to do. Like, how do you? Where are these other talents coming from that you're like, yeah, I'll just blow some glass. I'll just fucking, like.
So there's one really phenomenal. So first of all, I mean, the information's out there.
Yes.
You know, you just got to go dig
Fair,
somewhere around. I've got. Let's see.
Oh, I can see the church glass right behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is stained glass here. So this is not. This is actually one of the newest books I used. But this is the art director's handbook. But I use there's just all this information's available in books.
Yeah.
You know, and I found a bunch of vintage special effects books that I would comb through to learn all the special effects. But there was also at the same time this phenomenal resource called the Stan Winston School of Character Arts, which was I mean, really unbelievable. We would have gotten there on our own, I'm sure, right? But they gave us so much information that really let us push so much further. So that was also, I mean, but there's a lot of things I don't figure, learning how to solder and all of those kinds of things that, again, it's all there. Yeah. Which to do all the mechanization in Frank's hand, I had never done any of that before. Or making the eyeball mech, and there's all this stuff that's crazy. So when you make the eye, right, it has to pivot not at the back, because if it pivots at the back, it'll be like a lever. Pivot point has to be in the center of the eye, right? Well, that means you're basically to get the eyeball mech and all that stuff in there, I'm drilling to within a 1/16 of an inch of the outer edge of the eyeball. And so these eyeballs that, are handmade, that took 2 weeks to make. So, it's all that kind of stuff.
It's intense.
It's so
funny because you are essentially a form of a Dr. Frankenstein, just in his lab putting pieces together, trying to make life. It's fantastic.
I never heard about it. But yeah, it's all impossible when you look at it. It's possible when you get incredibly narrow.
Yeah.
It's just super micro with it. You're I need to learn how to solder. I can do that maybe. Where do you buy soldering stuff?
Yeah.
Well, so this brings up a question I had when I was watching it, which is 6 to 7 years. You have this sort of long, production. How much of that is pre-production? How much of that is we're building Zed and Frank? Now we're building the rest of the townsfolk. Now we're building the town. How much of it is and then how much of it is filming? Or is it literally a piecemeal thing? Is it okay, I've built the set for the castle and we've got the puppets. We're doing those sections this week, and then we're breaking all that down and we're moving on to build the next set. And I'm curious about the actual process of that.
I mean, the truth is there were more phases. So I did a proof of concept trailer where we built Frank and Zed and things like that. And so that was a year of building stuff to do this kind of proof of concept.
Yeah. And
then there was several months of fundraising, Kickstarter and fundraising stuff. And then we did, actually the majority of the film, at least probably 80% of it was filmed in about 9 months. So most of the film was made in this one big chunk.
Yep.
And then after that, it was build and figure out and problem solve all the things the miniatures and Frank's heart and practical effects. And those were done kind of little bit at a time. And then I also did some reshoots, which added a lot of time. So for instance, the intro, originally it was just this stained glass, and it was so boring. And I was God, who cares? The film starts with a history lesson. I want to put people there in the film right away. And so so the opening with the Moroi attack, I was we got to be there. We got to see all that stuff. But then, figuring out how to bring the god of death that you see in the beginning, that's all practical. That's 100% awesome. Practical.
That's awesome.
And, so that was the whole thing. How do I make a puppet god of death that doesn't just make you laugh? That's pathetic and just loses everybody. Because I was I'm gonna make a scary ass puppet,
Yeah.
And so that was done with blacklight liquid and using these black lights, these like industrial black lights that are shooting to the side. They were so strong, I actually had to get welders.
Whoa.
So like that's like a, so that's a typical thing. Like, all right, I think this is gonna work. I'm can't look at this. I'm going blind. Okay, welder's glasses. So you're like shooting this thing, and then and that's like, but and also like because I don't want to repeat anything. Like that's what you do for every shot. She's like, okay, we got. I think like the God of Death is maybe 6 seconds, maybe 10 seconds. And that's why, and you're sculpting everything. You got to wire up the LEDs for his eyes, kind of all that stuff, so that thing like takes a lot.
That's incredible.
That's so cool. And I remind you that Dr. Frankenstein did wear welder's glasses as he was creating Dr. Frank. So it continues. I want to ask about a very specific effect. I found the storm cloud from which Frank draws his lightning. If there was a movie of just that existing, I could probably watch like 2 hours of just that before I started to question, like, oh wait, nothing's happening, because it's just so gorgeous. What is that? How do you make that cloud?
So the question I was asking myself, because I had a very good visual effects supervisor, Adam Sager, positing, of stuff. And he worked for like 3 days. We needed a storm cloud. He worked for like 3 days straight on a storm cloud. And I was like, this won't work. This ain't. And I realized, I was like, I don't want a CGI storm cloud, that I would see like a fancy Hollywood movie. And there's no way I would ever get that anyways. Like, there's no way like my one guy can replicate what like an army of VFX would do, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I have to do a practical storm cloud. So that's like, how am I going to do it? So there's this thing called a saltwater tank. It's a very old effect. You take an aquarium, you fill it full of the bottom half is super saturated salt water, right? Then you put a piece of plastic down, and then you put fresh water on top, and then you pull the plastic out very carefully. And if you do everything right, you'll have an aquarium with salt water on the bottom and fresh water on the top. Then, if you're me, you light this thing that's not yet there with all your different colored lights. You figure out a way to focus on something that's not there. You hit record on the camera, and then you run, and you have a tube rigged up that squirts coffee creamer out. And then you run around flashing the lights as fast as you can. And
that's amazing.
I figured it was a liquid. And knowing that it's coffee creamer is so, this is going to sound weird. It's so satisfying, almost in like a I've just eaten it sense, just to know that. Like, next time I watch Frank Zed, which I will watch again, I'm going to look at that cloud and just covet how delicious it is, in addition to how beautiful it is.
Well, thank you. But that's like a shot where, it's 4 hours to set up. You get one take of about 3 seconds.
Yeah.
That's it. And then it's just a milky haze. Drain the tank, 4 hours, set it up again.
Dude, the first like 5 minutes of this movie, that was all I could think about. Because as you were saying before, you're a filmmaker before you're a puppeteer, it turns out, right? And so you have this filmmaker sensibility, and something I can see and feel in that is that there's tons of different shots. We're not recycling angles or shots of things, and so you've got these crazy miniature. I mean, the miniature sets are incredible. They're really well lit. They look great. They're super detailed.
They have tangible fog.
Yes.
I love me some tangible fog.
I mean, they're really incredible. And then it's just like over the first 5 minutes, it's just rapidly moving from miniature set to miniature set, and then to some of these indoor sets. And I was just like, he's doing that thing that when I was doing this as a 12-year-old on a card table with like clay, we went out of our way to make sure we could recycle things over and over for other shots, because it's so time consuming to do things that are only going to exist on screen for 5 seconds. And I could tell immediately within the first 5 minutes of the movie that was what you did. You went to the extent of just like, yeah, whatever it takes. If it's only there for 5 seconds, it's just going to be the best 5 seconds I've ever put in. Like, it's just going to, I'm going to give it every detail that all of the other stuff has, even though it's only there for, I was really impressed by that.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's one of the like another guiding principle I said is like, we're going to pack as much detail in as we can, and we're going to shoot it as if none of it matters.
Yeah.
You know? And that was like,
I love that.
yeah,
I really do. I wrote that down at some point where I was like, he's like throwing this stuff away, but I meant that as like a compliment. Like you were not precious in the way that you depicted any of this, and I think it helps sell the world of this movie. That you know, you're not precious about the craft, even though it's like just exploding with craft. You know what I mean? Like
and I
every
think
frame.
craft rises to the top when you don't focus on it.
Yeah.
When you focus on it, it becomes chintzy, and so to have it all just exist. I was saying to Garrett before earlier that watching this, I had to keep reminding myself that it had not been animated.
Yeah.
I had to keep like reminding myself that I was not watching, you know, like a computerized movie, that these were indeed puppets, just because it looked so sharp. And that, I think that comes from exactly what you're talking about, Garrett, where it's not focused on showing off the craft specifically. It's using the craft to serve this just like insane story.
Yeah. I was very impressed by that. It's like a level of Oh, sorry. I just interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. I just really like that you got, because to me, like I wanted it to feel as real as possible. And I was like, if this is their world, none of that detail matters to them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't, it's like, that's just like that's just what the mess hall looks like or whatever. Right. It is almost mundane to them. So it's really cool that, it feels like that effect was like worked for you guys.
Totally. I mean, I spent most of the movie being like, I can't believe how fucking detailed this is. Your puppets have teeth. I spent time thinking about it. I was like, how many movies? Because
Frank's got the teeth back here and up here where you can see. That's like how it's done.
Well, I really spent time thinking about that once I took notice of the teeth. I really started, because I watch a lot of animation. I grew up making animation. I like animation. I like puppetry. I like a lot of this stuff. I've watched a lot. I was like, how many puppets have I seen with teeth? I've seen like no puppets with teeth. That's like a level of detail I was like blown away by.
You know, I've never even thought about that. It's so interesting.
They just had to have teeth. But I love it almost looks like felt, like the eye wrinkles. Super effective for emoting. And actually, in terms of this popped in my head, but in terms of like a filmmaker aesthetic as opposed to a puppet aesthetic, there's a part where I forget which character suits up, and it's a suiting up montage that's all puppet. You're like, ching, the belt, the shield, all that stuff. Thumbs up to that. That's like, you know, it's like when the Muppets dip into actual cinema, it becomes novel because you go, oh, look, the Muppets are aping this or doing that. But I feel like most of this movie, it never felt like, oh, these puppets are you know, using a film thing. It does feel like a movie first before I even think about the puppets.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, they're not doing that Muppet thing where they're playing at being people in a movie.
Yeah.
They just are people in a movie.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, when the suiting up armor, like, if the Muppets did a suiting up thing, I'd be like, haha, they're doing Batman. But, like, in here, it was just like, no, this is the suit. He's suiting up. This is what's happening. And, you know, that works so... But that's so interesting to, you know, approach it from a filmmaker angle. That's very cool.
Yeah.
See it. I had a note here too that I think grog is like the coolest thing in the world.
Dan, I
love grog.
I've literally just been waiting to get to a point where we could stop talking about anything else and just talk about Grog. He was my favorite thing in this movie. I loved Grog.
Well, Grog does that thing. Oh, yes. Grog's making a cameo. This is something that I've always loved. My favorite in Muppets is when a Muppet has a person's hands. Or a person's arms with the puppet, and I feel like Grog had some of this. I think I saw some of that in the credits. Fantastic.
Yeah, so Grog, he's actually the only puppet that I built all by myself.
Whoa!
Look at that.
Post zombified Grog. Yeah, I love it.
Look at them teeth.
Love it.
Hi, Garrett.
This is the best day of my life.
Yeah, this is the first puppet we've ever had on Movie before.
Grog, it's a pleasure.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Yeah,
for
that's
being...
fantastic. He's scary, but he's like cuddly. He's
know.
big and cartoonish, but he's physical and like kind of human. Man, that is aces. Hi,
Jess,
Grog.
this will make more sense to you later. Can Grog say, "My name is Grog and I like to movie"?
My name is Grog. I like to movie.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
I just feel like I'm meeting like Brad Pitt right now.
I know.
This is phenomenal.
This is like that thing that everybody talks about when they get to meet Kermit.
And everybody talks to Kermit.
Yeah.
When they meet Kermit, no one talks to the puppeteer. They
That's
all
great.
talk to Kermit. As it should be.
I actually something that Grog was very instructive for me by the end of the movie when we got to see the credits and see how he came to life. I spent a lot of the movie trying to figure out the scale of things, just because I've done this stuff before, and so I spent a lot of the movie trying to figure out like how big are these puppets and like what, because I did feel like in Grog in particular I could see that there was some more human like motion, and so I was like, I think that might be like a more costumed performer. But then you could tell with some of the other ones, they're more like standard Muppets. It's a hand inside of a puppet. And so it was very revealing at the end to see that like, oh yeah, there's actually puppets on many different scales throughout this movie.
There he is.
Love it. Yeah. Okay.
Hi guys.
And so they're more like standard Muppets, right? Like they're more like a half scale kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. These guys
and then there's.
Yeah, they're tiny. So I he's here. You can see. So I actually, one of the things I wanted to do with the film was push all the boundaries to where I was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That was a goal with all the design, the orgy of blood, everything else. It's like, we have to be uncomfortable. We have to be like, this is not going to work. That's where everything has to be. And so, like with the scale, that was one of my goals. So the quartet were from Shine, the very first puppet film that I did.
Shine was fantastic, by the way.
Very good.
Oh, good.
I laughed my ass off. That was
Really
great.
enjoyed it.
And it's such an otherworldly concept of this killer light. Oh, fantastic.
So fun fact, the quartet gets all the same injuries in the orgy of blood that they get in Shine.
No
in the
way.
Yeah.
Now that you say
I
that,
recognized that they were there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
So
Yeah. Anyway, so with the scale, I was like, I'm going to push the scale to where I'm really uncomfortable. And so we got the Shine Quartet, which is the smallest puppets, and then I'm going to have somebody that's bigger than me, and I'm going to purposefully, they're going to fight. I'm going to put them in the same thing, and that's what happens. The quartet goes up against Grog, and my theory was, I was like, it's not going to matter. Like, we will be able to just obliterate scale, and no one will care as long as the story, as long as things are chugging along and it's engaging. The audience will buy it. But that was an example of going like, but I want to take that risk, you know.
Well, I also, a compliment to your filmmaking is that part of me asking that question was not being confused by the scale within the movie. It was that it felt consistent to me. Like the scale was very consistent throughout the movie. But because I have, had made some stop motion movies in the past, I was just curious, like how big are these sets? Like how big are these puppets? So I was really impressed by the end that like, you could tell Grog's like he's meant to be bigger than the other characters, but he lives in the frame with them as if he's just a bigger guy than the other guys. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't look to me like he is so vastly. He's much more differently scaled in reality than he appears to be in the movie. And that's really impressive.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it, it's getting the stuff to work together. And also the reason I wanted to push everything is that I have this theory that the camera turns the volume down. Yeah. So it's just like, especially like again, in the Orgy of Blood, I was like, we have to go absolutely absurd. I mean, I knew this. I was like, we have to go absolutely absurd and then it'll be acceptable. And I think Yeah. So I mean, I think also though, we only do like 11 takes on a good day. That's one of the reasons it takes so long. And I think a lot of that is like the shots start out and they just don't work. They just don't work, and you have to work it and work it and work it to get the performance and get it to where it feels lifelike. And a lot of that is like figuring out the eye lines and stuff. Because like with Grog, somebody's wearing him as a hat and doing an arm and doing the mouth, or doing the head like this, and somebody else is doing the hands. They have no idea where the eyes are. They have no idea, And so if you have Grog talking to somebody, and then this person is also just a hand, so they can't even really adjust. And so and if the eye lines are off, like if you're talking to somebody and they're just looking just even slightly off, the illusion dies. The characters just look. And so
I would never have even thought of that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When the puppets, when it's working, you're just like, oh yeah, they're doing what that character would do, and that's great. That's what you want. You want it to. You don't want to know that they're like two of them looking like this way and all that. Like,
we talked to the director of Ninja Turtles 2 on our show, and he actually specifically talked about how hard it was to coordinate the idea of an animatronic face attached to someone karate fighting and emoting in the process. And so, even with, servos and computers and all that stuff, it's still impossible. And if you've got, 3 people just manually doing a puppet, that's an amazing amount of coordination.
Oh yeah, because I mean, there are shots where there are 5 people puppeteering Frank, like 5 people working together. And then you also, I like to move the camera constantly, so you also have focus pulling and all that other stuff. That whole thing is like a dance. Like you're basically puppeteering the camera, honestly. Kind of getting it to move and do what it needs to do. Yeah, and so getting all of that to like work is hard, and then getting it to like actually like sing and be like worth watching is where it really that's where you're really, really grinding it out. But then when it works, it's like so cool.
Oh, it's got to be magic. Now, how does it come in? Like at the end, a really big splatter sensibility comes into things, and it is practical, tangible blood being splashed in buckets everywhere. And I see buckets of liquid blood splashing onto plush creations, and I imagine that's the end of that puppet after one shot. Is that the case, or is there other repeat puppets, or is there a great blood technique that you know?
So there's no
for a friend.
There's no duplicate puppets. So one of the scariest things is like in filming the Orgy of Blood, I was like, everything gets destroyed unequivocally destroyed, where the audience has no doubt. So like if a character gets killed, they get killed in a way where there's no doubt that they're dead. Like, so for instance, Grog, like when he goes zombie, he's being modified in a way we cannot undo it.
Yeah.
And so, we could get a couple takes by cleaning them up, but it was really scary in that, like, the Orgy of Blood is just done perfectly to my storyboards. There's no coverage in the film. You cannot get coverage. You get an angle according to the storyboards, and like that's it.
Yeah.
And then you shoot everything, and then when it comes to that character dying, you kill him, and you're like, man, I hope I got everything for the whole movie, because like I can't go back and get like an insert shot of Grog walking in or saying a line. Like you can't do any of that with any of the puppets. So the blood soaking, you could get a take or two most of the time. You could kind of clean them up, but it was really when they got destroyed that was like. The crew would celebrate, actually, especially my lead puppeteer. He was always like excited because he was like, cool. Jesse can't go back. We can't redo anything. The guy is dead. So there was like a mini, and it was like a way to, because like with the Orgy of Blood, we do 11 shots a day, right? And the scariest day for me on the film was like coming to my crew and being like, hey guys, here's the storyboards for the final battle. It's 1,500 shots. I mean, yeah. And I was like, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill me.
That's
they will never do this. They will never, ever do this, But they didn't. They were like totally game and down. But but it was like, I mean, 3 months of shooting to do the Orgy of Blood.
Oh, that
super. I mean,
the finale is wild. Dan and I were talking about it before we got on the line with you here. We were just like, such an entertaining movie, but that last half hour is like, it's like that's what you, when you're going to put your admission on the table, it's like that's what the admission is for, and that is paying out on every single one of those dollars. Like that is just like, and then some. You know what I mean? It's like it's giving me my money back. It's like
his head gets bisected at the angle, and mwah. Oh, that's how it's done.
Really, really impressive, entertaining stuff.
Oh, good.
Yeah, watching that was it was scary. Like I'm helping my buddy write a horror thing, and I showed him a scene, and he essentially said, he was like, "Listen, there's 2 like crazy bloody moments in this. Can you make it one crazy bloody moment? Because I don't think that first one's cleanable." And I had never really thought about that in terms of like writing before. So I was writing another draft. And so then watching these puppets just get soaked, I was like, man, that is one and done. There's like no way around this. And so I asked, like, is there anything that you did ever have to write around that might have been limited by that splatter sensibility?
No, it did the exact opposite.
Nice.
Opposite. Yeah, everything is written specifically ignoring all that stuff. The whole film is like, it was very much like, I will not let how am I going to do this? We're going to do the exact opposite. Yeah.
That's incredible. I love that. You got to respect that. Cause like I don't mind a little like CGI blood here and there in my horror movies, but like I really like splatter, and I like moppable blood being thrown everywhere. It's just it's so much fun, and I understand why people would shy away from that, because like you've got to clean that up. You've got to. It is just a production problem. So applause to you for just committing to like, no, fuck it, we are soaking this in blood.
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
Oh, yeah, we actually had a kiddie pool that sometimes the puppeteers would sit in.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so that was like one of the tricks that we came up with, was just having a kiddie pool to kind of limit the amount of blood. But it's still, I mean, it just gets everywhere. Everything is soaked. Like, and you got the cameras like all bagged up, like everything gets totally soaked. I'm like, that's what people are there for. Like, if you're not going to give it to them, like, what's the point? That's kind of what I'm like, why are we throwing a party if we're not going to party?
Hell yeah. That's what we always say on the show is like, don't make me think you flipped a truck. Flip the truck. Film it. And we will watch that truck flip over. That's like, just flip the truck.
And I also, I mean, frankly, I don't think I went into, I didn't know a lot about your movie before sitting down to watch it. So I didn't even go into it expecting it to commit to the orgy of blood it kept promising as hard as it did. So it was very fulfilling and satisfying for this movie to end up there. I mean, I was, by the time we got there, I was so long impressed already, because I just like the commitment to detail over this whole project is frankly like just astounding. So I was already like more than impressed. So then when it really did commit and when it really did deliver, I was like, this is some impressive shit. This is very fun.
Here's a question. I thought I spotted a watermelon being used to substitute for a destroyed head that had its brain scooped out. Am I accurate in having recognized that? Nice. I love a good watermelon head. That was a man who's on fire and a watermelon head. You give me that and I'm good.
Yeah, that was like, I think that it's like it's always got to be real, but we like dip our toes. We kind of put our toes across the line every once in a while for fun. Yeah. And there's a feeling. And I remember like on set that day, he had to get his head bashed in. And I was like, okay, we got to do something new. We've already seen, like, what's a new gore? And I was like, what if we just painted a watermelon? And it was just such a dumb idea. And we all got so excited about it. So like ran down, got like 2 watermelons, like rattle canned them like a puppet peach color.
Yeah.
And then Jason, my puppeteer, I mean, to my horror, but this is what happens. Like the drunk puppet that that gets turned into that, he just rips him totally apart. So there's no going back. I'm like, okay, we're doing this, and just like sticks it on Mr. Potato Head style. And it's just like, it's so stupid and so funny. You know,
but it was effective too, though. Like it still kept that level where I was like, "Oh, they're ripping out the inside of his brains." Like it still got that effect, even seeing it's a watermelon.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny is like you know, there's some people that just like, you know, certain things don't work for them, right? And God bless them, whatever. And like one person was like, "Yeah, the effects are pretty crappy. I could tell that was a watermelon." I'm like, "Come on, man! Like we know, like obviously it's."
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You know they're puppets, right?
Yeah.
But it's just funny, like the whole movie is thrown away, so eagle-eyed that he can tell it's a watermelon. Yeah.
Did you?
Go ahead.
Oh, please finish your thought.
No, that's it. That's it.
The shadow stuff, like I loved the shot where I think there were little rats attacked the cat. Mm-hmm. And you see it in the shadow, in the silhouette of it happening. Super effective, super cool. Is that shadow puppetry that I'm seeing?
So they're you know, I use shadows a lot, like the Moroi shadow. That was all real puppets, though, kind of doing that. But it is like that whole shot. I mean, the shots are just so technical because the margins are just like crazy thin. So getting pan over and getting like the mice jumping, you know, we had mice that you would see, and then we had other like basically marionette mice that are on strings to do the jumping. And the camera has to do the perfect pan off from the ones you see to the ones you jump and kind of over to the cat. And then the thing that the real kind of clever trick on that shot is that the cat actually has a bunch of mice pinned to him, right?
Oh, and then you can just
shake the cat, and all these mice are all over it. And then you also have the marionettes going at it. And that's how you get it looking like he's covered in mice.
That's like, I would think that's a puppeteering technique, but no, that is such a classic filmmaking technique. When the bats come out, they would just have the actors with some bats on their sleeves do this. That's so crazy. Oh, wow. Fascinating. Because that shot's effective. Because I was like, ooh, this cat's getting ripped to shreds. But also it was just so neat. That's so cool.
Yeah. So that shot, you know, that's classic, like super technical. Like the camera's doing a very tricky move and it's doing like a crazy rack focus that you have to do without seeing it breathe at all. So it's got to be perfectly in rhythm. And then, you have like basically these 3 different sets of puppets that have to seamlessly hand off, and it has to have energy. That's the thing that's so hard. Is everything you have to do these handoffs really, really fast, because if there's even a third of a second of dead space, the sequence just falls flat. Like the gas just goes right out of everything. It's got to push like so fast. But I'm glad you like that shot. That's like I love that shot. It's
so cool. It just has such a classic feel to it. And it's equal parts like scary, funny, and wow, how'd they do that? So just that put a spell on me right there. That was the moment where I was like, all right, I'm all in on this. This movie's gonna rock.
Good.
You know.
So good.
Is there anything else you could show us in your lab here? I'm looking all around in the periphery, and there's all these neat, colorful items.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff. So I got like
oh yes,
this is the sensor.
Love it.
And let's see what else that we got here. So we got
I love the like the hypnotic breath mask thing that he had. So cool. So cool.
Yeah, that was like I got the spider. I put that crap all over here.
Hey! Look at that. Oh, right on.
So this was like, we had a spider and it didn't move. And it just like and it just didn't quite work. So that's like something that got reshot. Let's see what else we got here. I got Frank's axe. There's Frank's axe.
Oh, very cool.
Wow.
Yes. So like this, one of the things that was tricky is I got one of the flesh-eating fish.
Oh, right on.
He's the backup. He's not our hero, but here's one of the flesh-eating fish.
Wow,
that's legitimate. I mean, I'm pretty afraid of fish generally, but that's legitimately chilling. That is a scary creation.
They're freaky. The flesh-eating fish are freaky, and there's something like. Go ahead.
Oh no, please.
Well, they were something that they were one of my first ideas. You know, is that Frank would clean the brains into this well, and that these little fish would go up but that's like a classic thing. You're like, how are we going to make these fish puppets? I don't know. But the picture got locked for all the sound effects and score and stuff like that. And I locked in a placeholder for the flesh-eating fish.
Nice.
So that I had to do it.
That's what a great way to do. Just you have to. You're trapped.
Yeah. Just like, otherwise it'll just be a black and white card, flesh-eating fish.
Yeah.
So
there was
great.
There was a documentary about the White Stripes back in the day, and there was a part in it where Jack White was saying, he was like, I always like to make sure I don't have the tools that I need to get it done, because it'll ensure that I do it. He's like, if I know it takes me 4 steps to get to the piano, I will push the piano so that it's like 6 steps. And even though I only have the time for 4 steps to get there, I'm going to have to make it. And I ultimately do. And like that attitude of just, it's locked with that, you know, like, I love that. I love that as a motivator, purposefully giving yourself not enough resources to get it done, so you have to.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, this isn't totally the same, but it reminds me. I watched this director's commentary or screenwriter's commentary for A Monster Calls.
Mm.
Ooh, yeah.
Right, you know, and the screenwriter whose name I can't remember right now, but he said this really cool thing. Apparently, when he teaches screenwriting, and one of the things he says is like, you know, I always tell my students like, oh my God, now I'm forgetting the word. What do you call it when you're like, want to get revenge on somebody, or you feel really like burned by somebody? Oh man,
vendetta.
Not quite, not that strong. Like doing something out of spite or feeling like scorned.
Vengeance. You want validation.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, anyways, maybe it's out of spite or something like that. I'm not coming up with the right word, but anyways, but he's like, the point of it is, he says, I always tell my students, hold on to that feeling because it's a great motivator for writing. You know, or someone saying you won't be able to do that. You know, wanting to prove somebody wrong, or any of the. And I think as like an artist, like I also will look to any tool to work, because I mean, what happens like with Frank and Ted, it's like, it's all I think about. It's all I want to do, except when it's time to do it. Then I will do anything else. And it's like nailing my feet to the floor to like, make it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, and once we start filming, it's great. And I'll push for 50 takes and just love it and have a great time. But getting into it can be so much discipline.
I feel you. As a writer, my favorite thing is having written, but I hate starting writing. Once I'm in, you can go all day. But that first I feel you. That's why I actually am very friendly towards deadlines, because once again, if the deadline's approaching, then you better get typing.
No better motivator.
Yep.
I wanted to ask about the I guess I don't know how to ask this, but how much of the movie, is there any animation in the movie? I guess that's really what I want to ask. I felt like I noticed some stuff that looked like it might have been like stop motion-y type stuff, but I wasn't really sure.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Nice.
So for a second I was going to do the lightning by like soaking yarn in glue and kind of wrapping it around nails to have it at these funny angles.
Mm-hmm.
and I did some tests, but it was like way too Michel Gondry, and it just kind of took you out of it. It was just not right.
Mm-hmm.
So I played with that for a second, but I don't think we used any stop motion. No, I mean, I always say, like, I think it's a stop motion aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that wouldn't be weird if you saw it as a stop motion film. It would seem kind of like.
Yep.
I had to keep reminding myself it was puppets because I just kept kind of taking it in as stop motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, and I take that as, like, as a huge compliment. But yeah, it's all live action.
That's really impressive because, in particular, the stuff surrounding Frank and Zed, like the tower that they're in, the way that contraption works, that sort of re-energizes Frank every day. A lot of that stuff has a look and feel of, like an old Rankin Bass cartoon or something, which is great. Like, that's a great aesthetic. And so I was trying to parse, like, how much are they just actually building these things and doing them in camera? How much are they animate? That's very impressive.
Yeah, no, it's all in camera. Like the gears, and that was like fun. Like even like with the gears, I was like, I don't want steampunk.
Right.
It's too modern, right?
Yep.
And I have to have gears, so there's a whole thing, and so I got to really nerd out on gears. And there's this, and so first made the decision, okay, we'll go wood, and that'll help get us out of steampunk. And then there's these things called organic escapements. Like people do these like really beautiful gear art. And so that's like the main mech that you on the wall is this crazy organic escapement thing that is not like a regular gear that has this crazy kind of TikTok thing. And so that might be what felt kind of stop motion-y to you, because it's not just two gears moving. It does this weird kind of thing, but it's all practical, and in fact, and building that with like a whole thing, like, okay, these gears have to work. So when we turn it, it does this real kind of crazy motion, and that was exciting when making those gears and actually having them work.
That's really cool.
Yeah, the whole recharging sequence is so nice because it's such a great showcase for the puppetry. I also like it because it's just like mad science. That kind of stuff's fun. But I really love the relationship between Frank and Zed. I can't highlight enough how much of my joy in the movie, and unexpectedly so, because I really thought I was about to just sit down and watch like a cool craft project. And I just really love that relationship between Frank and Zed, where like it is Pavlovian with Zed at some point with the bell and stuff like that, but like they love each other, they care about each other, and that really comes through. And I think that emotional arc is anchored around all of the recharging scene, and I don't know, that really just threw me for a loop, how much I truly cared about them as characters. And to that scene is just kind of where it all really comes from, for me at least.
So it sounds like you were surprised that you cared for them.
Yeah, like I guess typically I am not. I love animation, but I don't seek it out. I love puppetry, but I don't seek it out. Like I love the Muppets. I grew up on them, but it always seems like a novelty thing to me. And so I came towards this like, oh, this is going to be like a novelty, fun project. And very quickly I was like, almost forgetting about the wowza factor of the puppets, simply because I was engaged with the story. And it really comes down to how much I really, really cared about Frank and Zed and about their relationship. And even as we learn about the background and the shared background they sort of have, it all just, made that, it like validated my feeling by making it even richer. And so it was just such a nice surprise to sit down for something that I thought would be a neat novelty and ended up just being a really fantastic story told in a way that is novel and cool.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
I also always like when these kind of like, for lack of a better word, these kind of like, sort of silly fantasy stories have like a sort of tragic heart to them. Which I really liked about that backstory that we do learn about Zed and Frankenstein. Like I like that there's some actual tragedy at the heart of this. It kind of makes the fun, silly world that this takes place in otherwise. You know, the village people are all often kind of these like dismissive and or dismissed, like jokey kind of characters. I like that world is where we are, but I like that at the heart of it is just this little bit of real tragedy there that kind of motivates all of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that was, because, part of me, again, it was a risk, but it was like the thing I wanted to do. I'm like, this is a story, and like I want to tell the story about these monsters, and I don't want them to just be like misunderstood. They look ugly, but they're perfect human beings on the inside. I was like, I did not want that. I want them to be like real monsters that are like complicated. But I was like, man, can I make this? Will people come along with me? I'm going to be like, hey, it's going to open up and it'd be like, hey, these guys, their lives is really boring. They've been doing it. And we're going to start off and just let people know, hey, these guys are really boring, everybody, and they don't talk. and so, I was worried. I was like, man, are people, will it work? Will these characters who don't, really say much and who are like, can I tell this like kind of really serious, like heart on its sleeve story with my dolls, and will people go there with me, but it was also something that I was really fortunate because the crew, I was like, we're going to do this real. We're never going to wink at the audience. And if it fails, it fails. But if it works, the audience will have a better experience. Like this is what I think the audience wants. They don't want winking. They don't want to they want to like have us do our best to make everything as real as possible, make the characters as real as possible. Like that's what we want to, that's what the audience deserves. That's what we're going to try and do. And there's a higher risk because if it fails a little bit, the whole thing becomes silly,
Mm-hmm.
works, then hopefully like people will have, like the characters will like be real.
The whole time I was watching it, the thing that I kind of kept thinking about was like, this is like one of those things that I feel like I've always wanted, but no one ever actually gave me, which is like, I grew up on Rankin Bass cartoons and I really liked those. And it would be fine if they made more and they were still for children. I would probably still appreciate them just because I like the craft of them. But I'm now a 30-year-old man and I'd still like a Rankin Bass cartoon made for me, please. Like, give me one that's a little more adult and has a little more of my adult sensibilities in it, but is otherwise played just as earnest and just as straight and just as, do you know what I'm saying? And your movie walks in that tone of just being like a very earnest, like, puppet cartoon, but then having this sort of a very violent streak and a very, these things that sort of appeal to me as an older movie fan,
Yeah, well, it's interesting you should say that because, like, particularly with Rankin Bass, that's not someone that I've thought about. I watched Rudolph, a year or two ago, and like when he gets teased, it sucks.
Yes.
Like you feel him, and that's all done like and then even maybe Dennis the dentist. I'm trying to remember like the elf who wants to be a dentist. Like this, there's a similar thing too, where you're like their problems feel very real to them. And I think maybe that's, like the tone and kind of what I wanted to do with Frank Zed was very important. And I was super protective of it. And that's why I was like, look, like I agonized over like the 2 cuss words in the film. Cause I was like, I don't know, man, I don't know. And I was like, wow, we're gonna go for it here, right? But protecting that tone, protecting that kind of tender and that earnestness was like so important, even to the point where like the love interest or Laverne or the young woman who like goes into the forest, right? I was like, she can't be like interested in the baker. That's absurd. Like that she would have like be like attracted to the baker. That will stomp on the tone for some of the audience. There'll be some people in the audience that'll be like, man, seriously, come on, she wouldn't go for them, and it would just, she would never do that, right? And so I had to really rack my brain. I was like, oh, she would go for like a croissant, though. She would.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And that, like, my wife is who I was thinking of. You know, my wife would be like, I feel her. I would do it. There's days I would go to get me a chocolate croissant, you know?
Yeah, a fresh baked pastry will get me to do. There's a shorter list of things I wouldn't do than what I would for a nice fresh pastry.
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. But that's the place where, like, I agonized over that because I was like, it'll ruin the tone. It'll be wrong if I get that. I gotta get her in the woods for a reason that, like, is right for this world, you know.
It's a really that is a difficult line, I think, to walk, and a balance that is very impressive that you achieved. I'm really just repeating what we just said, I guess, but like that it has that earnestness. And I love what you said about the 2 swear words that you chose, because I did actually clock that at a certain point. I was like, it's really impressive that, like, because that's the thing is, like, okay, gory puppets. When you say that to me, you say it's like a gore movie with puppets. I do imagine that they're going to say fuck every other word. For some reason, that's what seems to go with that to me, that it's going to be on the side of extreme. It's going to be on the side of, we're doing this because we want to cross.
Meet the Feebles, yeah.
Yeah, we want to cross as many boundaries as possible. Like, look at all this fucked up shit that puppets do, you know? But the movie is not that. The movie is the sort of earnest tone, again, of like a Rankin Bass cartoon. It just happens to be gory, like an R-rated horror movie. You know, it's like, that's a very careful, impressive line, I think, to walk and have achieved so well. It's a very delicate balance.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was super important. I mean, it was like super, super mindful. And part, I don't know. And even like part of the earnestness, I think, was like going to the extreme with the blood in some way. I mean, it's very much a gut thing where you kind of feel it. But I think things like the watermelon was kind of a check in there, or just all this. Yeah. But it was, I mean, because, you know, I like an open set, and like if people have ideas, I like to, you know, I'll always listen to it, because if it's like a better idea or a better joke, great, let's get it in the film. But there weren't very many of these. Like, the crew was like very tuned in, but every once in a while there'd be a little joke that I'm like, yeah, that's funny, but it'll ruin the tone, you know. And I'm not stepping on the tone for a laugh. Like, no way.
Yeah,
you know.
I had the thought about halfway through the movie, like, I could probably show this to the right 8-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, it's violent as hell, and they might say blood orgy a few too many times, where I'd have to explain what that is. But otherwise, it so well plays in that tone that, like, you know, if you've got the right 8-year-old that could take the violence and at least, you know, be able to categorize it appropriately, like, it really plays in that tone quite well. I think it you know, it works.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. I'm my daughter is 6, and she loves all the puppets. She loves Frank. She loves Zed.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to see the movie though. If like if she hears it or something, she's like, "Dad, turn it off." You know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Of course, I'm wondering like the cat puppet. You know, I've spent hours being the cat. But I'm like, I don't know, when will she watch it? I don't know, like when she's 13.
I was gonna say, I think like that like, you know, 12, 13, right in that age right there, feels like
That's
this would hit a sweet spot probably pretty well.
I do know, that there are some parents who have shown their kids, and the actor who plays the priest, his nephews saw it. He's got a nephew that I think is about 12 or 13 that just freaked out, to just love the movie. And it was really cool because Steve is the guy who played the priest, actually had the priest puppet and some stuff at his house at the time. He actually has a business where he does a bunch of puppet stuff. Anyways, so his nephew got to come, and Steve was like just excited because he was like the coolest uncle, because he had like the priest and he had done it and he could do the voice. And his nephew was like, "Oh my God, Uncle
That's
Steve."
so cool.
And apparently, like his nephew watched the film like 3 times in a row, just like loved it.
It's amazing.
Oh, incredible.
That's so. I mean,
incredible.
Like, one of the other things it reminded me of, and I was a huge fan of this at that age, was like Frankenweenie. The Frank and Zed characters a little bit remind me of the kind of tone of that and stuff, and so I could totally see being that age and just like really falling for this.
I was going to say Army of Darkness, but that's just because
funny.
that was the movie that I saw when I was probably like just a skosh too young to see it, so
Uh-huh.
it like captured my imagination, but like really freaked me out a little bit, which I appreciated for. But I got a couple, maybe it's like the medieval vibes to it, but I got some vibes of that off of Frank and Zed, which is always a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, definitely. In fact, there's one of the things that I was tasked. So one of my Kickstarter backers had a reward where they got to come up with a kill or a movie or something that I would need to homage, something from a famous movie that I would. I was like, all right. So I called the backer up and I was like, okay, so what are you thinking? What movie do you want me to do an homage to? And I was like, and he goes, have you heard of Army of Darkness? And I was like, yes, I've heard of Army of Darkness. He's like, okay, I want you to do the chainsaw hand. I was like, oh man, okay, I got to do the chainsaw hand. And so I was like, okay, all right, I'll figure it out. Thank you very much. And it's not like he had read the script or anything like that. Like he was just doing exactly what he had signed up for.
Yeah.
And of course, I treated it like very seriously. But I was like, how am I going to like do an homage to Army of Darkness without just ripping people out of the film?
Yeah.
And like chainsaw hand. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I was thinking about gears and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, wait, I know. What I'm going to do, chainsaw is like a super badass weapon, right? This is the coolest thing you could have on your wrist. I'm going to do the exact opposite. What is the weakest, lamest, like crappiest weapon you could have on your wrist? And that's the broom, like a single strand from the broom.
Yeah.
And so that's where Poke the Shit Out of Him came from. That's like actually an Army of Darkness.
That's funny.
Incredible. Nice. And I love just all of them just on their poke attack. That is a very, very funny visual of really them just all clinging to him as they all fantastic.
Jesse, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I had one more question for you, if that's all right. The thing that I really wanted to ask is that Frank and Zed themselves are unlike any other puppets I think I've ever seen in something. They looked. They didn't look like what I would expect when somebody says, "Hey, it's a movie with puppets." That is not what I anticipated or expected, and they're clearly like very flexible and dexterous and movable, yet like they seem so sturdy. I was so impressed with how sturdy they seemed. To look at them, I would think you would not be able to manipulate them very well because they do look so sturdy comparatively to what I think of when I think of a puppet. But then to watch them, they're very dexterous, and sometimes in unexpected ways too. There were certain articulation points on them that I was surprised by and stuff. Like, what are they? How do you even does that? And is that a thing that like? Is it a typical thing that already exists that I would know a familiar example of, or they are a unique thing?
So they're made of silicone.
Okay.
Like a fancy, expensive silicone.
Yeah.
And fiberglass. I mean, that's what they're, and they have resin eyes and things like that. I think what might be, I mean, they're brought to life. I mean, I did a lot of puppeteering, but my main puppeteer is this guy, Jason Ropp, who is just phenomenally talented. I mean, he's so talented.
Yeah.
And, puppeteering is a thing where I have a theory that there's certain things they can do working on it as a craft, like stand-up writer and like puppeteer. Are things that people, some not everybody, but some people just think they can do, having never even done it in a way that like you would never apply to like playing the piano or guitar or anything like that, right? And puppeteering is absolutely an art, and my lead puppeteer, Jason Ropp, is just so talented in what he can do. And one of the things I love about him is that he's not precious at all with the puppets. Like, he really works them hard. So Frank and Zed, all the puppets get, manipulated in really interesting ways. I mean, there's like, and he'll take like the shots, like he'll take the puppets and even the felt ones, and he'll like scrunch them and move them with their hands. Like, there's a shot with the baker where the baker's like in the woods and he's like looking at his note and he goes to think, and Jason like squishes half of his face so that he's kind of like chewing on his cheek. He's like,
Yeah.
Like this, like not what a regular person would do. It's like it's an extra level of like work. And I don't even know how he's doing it. It's not like the puppet's not built to do that. He's like warping it with his hands. And so, with Frank and Zed, he's also doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, so for instance, like a thing he did with Frank a lot is that he would take Frank's lower teeth, his lower jaw, and he would slide them up front when Frank is thinking like, and he's taking the actual kind of built thing and I mean, really breaking. He's basically breaking the puppet to get the teeth to move past where they should. And it's a great performance. I mean, it brings it to life.
That's incredible. That's what, and so but they are like, they are more. There's a puppeteer like with his hand inside of Frank and like actually manipulating him like that. That's so interesting. I mean, because they really look like, they look like an action figure I would buy. They look like a very solid a thing. It's really impressive.
Thank you. I mean, they're solid and they're heavy. I mean, they're very heavy puppets, especially Frank. I mean, they're absolute. And you also have like inside Frank and Zed, you have all the IMAX and stuff are in there.
Oh yeah.
The other thing, and I think this is part of what works. It makes it a big challenge, but also work for it. Is like, with Zed, he's got a huge hole in his brain. So most of his head is empty. You would never do that typically with a puppet.
Right.
Because you're taking all your hand space. You're just taking it out. And he's got his eyes. So you're really extra limited in your access there. And then with Frank, he's got the water dome. So his brain is also a big part of that's taken out. And you can see through to the teeth and all that stuff is also where the hand would be. So that's also like super, you're taking up a lot of the hand space. But a lot of that was also done so that you wouldn't see the hand. I was like, how do we get the hand out of these guys? I don't want people to just imagine this.
Yeah.
And kind of think through that. And the whole film was done that way. Like, there's no like 4 foot by 8 foot sheets of plywood anywhere. There's no 2x4s. Like any modern kind of geometry, any modern touch point is all work. I worked very hard to have none of that. So you never have a modern visual thing to pull you out.
It totally works, and you can see that attention to detail in every frame. I thought I was really clocking that stuff just from a design perspective. Like major success like across the board.
I'm so glad you guys liked the movie.
It was fantastic. Big fan. Can you speak on where some of our listeners can catch it or where it will be seen? I know it was just at Nightstream.
Yeah, so we're trying to figure out the home for it right now, honestly. I mean, if your listeners, emailed Netflix or Hulu or any of the places that they would want to see the film, I don't know. That's kind of a lame thing to ask, but if any of your listeners did that, I mean, those that would go gangbusters in terms of helping us like kind of get the film out there. Cause we're trying to talk to some people and people are responding like really, really well to the film. They seem to really, really like it, which is so exciting, cause I was very worried about it. But people seem to really like the film. But it's it's a tiny film. It's so small. And so, so that's kind of that's not the best answer, but if there's, we got to find the home for it right now. We're looking for a home.
Well, that's a good answer. I think we can mobilize our listeners to do exactly that. Because I assure you, if you're listening to this, you do want to see this movie. Yeah. It is exactly within the flavor profile of what our audience digs. So I assure you that you do want to see it. And if you want to send an email to any of those people, please do, because more people should see this.
Yeah. Jesse, can you tell people where they can find like you on the internet, like where they can follow along for this part of the journey and stuff? Yeah.
So puppetcore.com. We have a mailing list, and that's like just kind of like, hey, you can see it here kind of stuff. And then Puppetcore Facebook or Facebook /Puppetcore and Instagram /Puppetcore. That's where we have most of this.
That's great.
Nice.
Yeah, dude, thank you very much for being here with us. This was a real pleasure and a joy, as was your movie.
Good.
I feel like I actually just learned a fair amount about filmmaking just from this conversation. And I always value when we get an interview where I can come out of it feeling like I know a little bit more about my favorite medium. So, thank you so much for coming on and giving our show that gift.
Well, you're welcome. Dan and Garrett, it was really fun talking to you guys, and you had a lot of insights into the film that I had never thought of. So it's also really cool to hear talk about the Rankin and Bass, and then even like the Frankenstein thing. Like I connected that at all. So it's fun to get your perspective on the film and actually see this film that I know so well in a new light also.
Yeah, it's great. Well, listen, we'll wrap it up here, and then we'll touch on the other side of wrapping it up. But the way we do that is a little around the horn thing here. Dan, I'll do our plugs really quick, and then we'll close it out. Sound good, everybody?
Right on.
Sounds great.
Good.
Awesome. So yeah, you can find us everywhere on the internet. I like 2movie. It's numeric 2. Facebook, Twitter. I like 2movie at gmail.com. You can find me at Filmadelphia on Twitter and Letterboxd, and I write for cinema76.com.
Yep, at Dan Scully on all of those same things, cinema76.com, findy.com, and check out my other show, Hot Property. That's available on Spotify, so check that out.
Cool. And Jesse, you're Puppet Core everywhere, right? That's where people should look for you, Puppet Core.
Yeah. Facebook /Puppet Core, Instagram /Puppet Core, or just puppetcore.com.
Awesome. And then we'll do this little closing. You can join us in this, Jesse. You'll figure it out really quick. My name is Garrett Smith, and I like to movie.
My name is Dan Scully, and I like to movie.
My name is Jesse Blanchard, and I like to movie.
And
Yes.
we all know that you like to movie because we like to movie.
Oh.
He's late to the party.
I'm so glad he joined in.